everybody. Welcome to the Roadie on the Horn podcast. Today is November 25th at time of recording. An awesome podcast today. Again, talking about what's going on in the world of sports and other things in life that we'll get into our questions a little bit later. As always, I am joined by my awesome co-host and great friend who's living in Colorado, hanging out down there. Donnie, how's it going, man?
Oh, just living the dream. I'm definitely hanging out. That's for sure. There's been a lot of hanging out and not a whole lot of everything else going on right now. But yeah, I'm doing well. Excited to talk about sports again, like we do every week. RK, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good as well. Donnie, you just got your Xbox console though. I know you're fired up about that, aren't you?
I did. It's currently sitting right next to me. I haven't put it together yet. I haven't plugged it in yet. We've been tired today. We've been tired.
Hey, it's like that. I'm gonna get my console sometime soon, hopefully, maybe later today. Then we can grind the 2K streets. So excited for that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's definitely what we have to look forward to there. But yeah, as we said, we're gonna get into some sports thoughts. We'll do that right here, starting with the NFL. So interesting news coming out of the NFL today, actually, for us at time of recording. So the Steelers and Ravens, they were initially scheduled to be playing on Thanksgiving night. Unfortunately, the Ravens have had some COVID cases. They have 7 players who have either tested positive or been in close contact with someone who did test positive. The biggest name player that I saw of the players who tested positive was Calais Campbell. So that was interesting. So they opt to move that game back to Sunday, and they'll kick that off at 1:15 Eastern. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I messaged Donnie about this a little bit ago, but I can't recall a time when there's ever been a game that's kicked off at 1:15 Eastern. Usually it's always like right at noon Central or 1 p.m. Eastern. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, so unfortunately the Ravens have had some COVID cases. So hopefully we'll get to see that game on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing surprising here. I think we've established that COVID is going to be something that they have to deal with in the NFL this year. It is interesting to see them just shift the game to Sunday and not replace the Thursday night game. Obviously, I think Thursday night football is usually the one we look forward to on the week of Thanksgiving at least. But we're going to only have, I think it's only 2 games, right? I could be wrong on that. But
yeah, it's just the 2 games. And that was going to be the best game. Steelers-Ravens was going to be the best game. We got, obviously, with the Lions and Texans and Washington and Dallas. So we're not getting great football, but we're getting 2 football games. But yeah, not at night.
Yeah, maybe not going to be super interested in either of those games. That's fine, though. More time to spend with the fam, more time to hang out and do nothing. But yeah, it is really interesting to see just how things have developed and how the players feel about it. Like I saw Eric Ebron tweet earlier that it's BS or whatever that they have to change their game to Sunday, which I mean I guess I understand where he's coming from considering it's not really his team that's dealing with it. However, you want I think the Steelers, if they want to play this game, they want to play this game with the Ravens at the fullest capacity possible, so it'll be a litmus test for how good they are, and also if they win, it'll be a real wake up call for the rest of the NFL if they're not awake yet. I mean, obviously 10-0. Huge, but yeah, I don't know. I can understand where the players are coming from. I can understand where Eric Ebron and some of the Steelers are coming from, but player safety and just seeing if we can get to a point where we have a more clean game where players can actually play in is probably the best case scenario here.
Yeah, I saw Juju Smith-Schuster tweeting about that as well. Steelers, earlier this year, they had to take an earlier bye because they were scheduled to play the Titans, who had COVID cases. So now it's been a few times this year where Pittsburgh's been impacted. But like you said, I mean, Pittsburgh's undefeated. They already won at Baltimore this year. So, I mean, hey, it'll just be a little bit later in the week for that one. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. I know, like, all over the summer, we were talking about, like, how is COVID going to impact things? How are they going to make decisions when this stuff happens? So, I mean, the Ravens have 7 players tested positive. I guess that's enough to move a game back. It's kind of interesting, like, what is actually the number that has to hit for them to reschedule a game? It's kind of weird to follow.
Yeah, I'd be curious if a team only had a couple cases, but let's say their quarterback got COVID or something like that. It also depends on what team it is. I think they'd probably play favorites in certain scenarios. It's like, let's say Tom Brady got COVID on the Bucks, they'd probably move the Bucks Chiefs game back. Like, you have to think. I don't know. I can't tell you one way or another what the right way to do things is. However, they were fine until today, and there were more tests. Like they still had couple players that were out. It's like obviously Dobbins and Ingram have been out for 3 or 4 days now. We've known they're not going to play. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting aspect of things. It's like it depends on who the players are. If a quarterback ended up getting COVID, they would move the game back, and then it would be like, oh, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah, it's definitely based on the caliber of player that tests positive as well. That definitely has an impact. So, I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to go about it. Like it's not the Steelers' fault that this happened, so they're being penalized and pushed back. So again, I can see why some of their players were upset with it, but that's the decision that the NFL goes with. So we'll look forward to that game on Sunday. Should be one of the highlight the weekend for football this weekend. Obviously, two of the best teams in the NFL going at it again. So we look forward to that. But shifting over now, is just go over a few games that we saw on Sunday out of the NFL. A couple good ones. Colts Packers. That one ended up 34-31 in favor of Indianapolis in overtime. Thought that was a pretty good game. Chiefs Raiders. Another good game on Sunday Night Football. Patrick Mahomes came through at the end, found a wide open Travis Kelce. KC wins 35-31. And last game, I thought that was pretty good over the weekend. Titans Ravens. So Titans won that game in overtime. Thought that was a pretty big win for them. Derrick Henry had another big game. So that game in Baltimore too. So nice win for the Titans there. But any of those games or other games from this weekend stand out to you, Donnie?
Oh man, it's incredible to see. See, I think the Steelers obviously undefeated. You have to be looked at. They have to be looked at as a serious contender. But watching the Chiefs' offense, just it took them probably a minute and a half to go down the field and score after giving up a touchdown, which is just incredible. Um, I don't know if anything at this point, it might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think the Chiefs are like far and ahead the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't think it's even close. Just maybe the Chiefs are not the best team all the way around, but Patrick Mahomes does so much. He's just such an incredible talent. And just watching them tear up the Raiders defense, who had not been that bad, considering what the Chiefs offense usually provides. Watching the Chiefs just run down the field, drive down the field, and score super easily at the end of the game. It's like, I find it hard to pick against them and pick against Patrick Mahomes, who, as I've said in the past, I think is the best quarterback in the league and will be the best quarterback ever once when it's all said and done.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I mean, seems like the Raiders have been the team that's given Kansas City the most trouble. That was obviously their only loss when they won in Arrowhead, and then another close game on Sunday. But yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, we even saw it in the Super Bowl last year. Like that game, the Niners had their lead, and then fourth quarter, Mahomes just took over. Like they can just take it to a whole nother level. They added Le'Veon Bell to that offense. He scored his first touchdown with Kansas City on Sunday as well. So definitely can see that point. I think Kansas City and Pittsburgh are probably that top tier of elite teams so far this year that we've seen.
Yeah, it's incredible to see who they throw to. It's like, when Demarcus Robinson's getting 6 or 7 catches and Byron Pringle's out there getting catches, it's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter who he's throwing to. He just has to sling the ball around because these guys are going to do their job. It must be the easiest job in the world to be a receiver for Patrick Mahomes because the ball's going to be in your hands if you run a good route. It's incredible how talented he is.
And with that, I mean, his arm strength, like a guy like Tyreek Hill, there's a lot of times where he'd be streaking down the field and he's like, all right,
Oh
I
yeah,
can let up on
60
my route,
yards,
but
60
Mahomes
yards,
can
he
get
just
it there.
off balance, just lobs it up the field, and it's just that easy. Like, I really don't think we've ever seen a quarterback with this much talent, like ever in the history of football. I don't think we've ever seen a quarterback that had this type of skill set, this type of just near perfection almost.
Yeah, I think really the only quarterback I can kind of see a comparison would be like young Aaron Rodgers, like when the Packers won the Super
Sure,
Bowl in
fair.
2010. I think if you look back at some of those highlights, that was crazy as well. But I mean, yeah, and plus when you consider the fact that he's partnered with Andy Reid, I mean, their offense is just insane when you look at like pre-snap motion and everything that they're doing to be creative. Shovel passes, that's always an Andy Reid favorite as well. We saw like Travis Kelce throw a shovel pass, like
Which
Andy Reid's
was
always cooking up some stuff. So
so
they
strange
got
to
it going
see,
on.
but it worked so well. Everything worked so well. It's like even when Tyreek Hill doesn't get like they do their he comes around in motion and they hand the ball to Tyreek Hill, he gets a yard or two. Even when it doesn't work, it still works because it's like you're constantly leaving the defense in suspense. They don't know what you're doing. They have no idea, and that's the beauty of things with the Chiefs offense. It's mostly Mahomes, I'd say, from a danger standpoint, but the coaching is so good too. It's like it's very hard to bet against a team like this.
Yeah, no question. Imagine trying to be a linebacker against Kansas City. You see Tyreek Hill flying in motion one way. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to get over there. Then they end up just handing the ball up the middle. I mean, they got everybody guessing out there. So Kansas City's definitely got it going on. That was a nice comeback win for them on Sunday. But with that, we can look ahead now to this coming weekend and some of the things going on, not only the NFL, but college as well. We saw the first edition of the college football playoff rankings come out. Really no surprise for me at the top. Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, your top 4 teams. I think that was pretty much a given. I think it's pretty much a consensus that those are the top 4 teams right now. It would take another loss from one of those teams for somebody else to jump in, I would say, even though that Clemson already has that loss. Again, it was to Notre Dame, no Trevor Lawrence in that game. So I definitely think that those are the top 4 teams that we've seen so far this year.
Yeah, I agree. I was listening to ESPN discuss them last night after everything had been released, and I found it really interesting. just to see how they considered things. Considering so Ohio State only has 4 games played, whereas there are teams below them that like Cincinnati, who's ranked 7th currently, 8-0, hasn't really struggled. Had a close game against Central Florida, but other than that, they've blown out every opponent they've played. 3 touchdowns or more, something like that. So I find it really interesting to see how they've basically said, "Oh, yeah, the games aren't going to really matter. How many games you play, how many wins you have, isn't going to really end up mattering in the long run." I feel like this is going to be a year where we could see a team that goes undefeated and just tears through everybody. Like Cincinnati could very well go 10-0 in the regular season games, not really much of a question there, and end up outside of the top 10, even though I think it's fair to say that Cincinnati plays decent competition. It's like they're playing Central Florida, they played Memphis, they played Houston, they're playing Tulsa, they played Temple. So it's like they're playing D1 schools, not like they're playing bums. I find it really interesting to see just how they're going about things and what their. I'd like to see the criteria for how they picked everything and what their explanations were. Obviously, Ohio State can't hold it against them because they only played 4 games. But a team like Cincinnati, who has just dominated everybody they played, might deserve a chance to at least try to win something.
Yeah, Cincinnati definitely looks legit. I think of kind of those group of five, like non-power five conference teams, like Cincinnati looks definitely really good. And like you said, they have played good teams. They had a nice win over UCF over the weekend, as you mentioned. But yeah, I think that is kind of interesting. I mean, even when we look further down the poll, like teams like BYU, they're 14th and they're 9-0. They were one of the biggest fallers from the AP poll to the college football playoff. They're even ranked below some teams with 2 losses, like Georgia, Oklahoma, and Iowa State. So I thought that was kind of interesting that BYU is so low. Another team that is also undefeated that I don't think is getting enough talk about. I mean, there's 2 teams in the Pac-12 really. I think Oregon and USC, both those teams sit at 3-0, and they're ranked 15th for Oregon and 18th for USC. I think both those teams could start kind of climb a little bit as we get a little bit further into the year. But yeah, definitely interesting to start getting some college football rankings and talk out there this week.
I found it really interesting that they are willing to include teams that are 6-2 or 5-2 at this point so high on their list. And it's just I think it's more or less because that they have they have the recognition from previous years, they have the pedigree, but it's like Oklahoma realistically does not have a chance to be in the top 4. I'd say that's a fair assessment. I say Georgia doesn't have a chance to be in the top 4. I think it's a fair assessment. When Georgia lost to Florida and Alabama, that basically ends your season, ends your chances to get in. But I don't know. At that point, I'd say 2 losses probably should essentially eliminate you from even being in contention for a top 10 spot at this point. With still with weeks to come, obviously they could climb as the season goes on, as teams like play harder games, obviously. But I don't know. I find it really interesting to see just again, as per usual, it's a lack of trust in the lesser divisions, the lesser it's like obviously you'd like to have teams from the ACC, the Big 12, SEC, those schools in your championship, but um, I don't know. I feel like teams like Cincy and BYU don't get enough love. Period. Even though they've done everything they've been asked to do, it's like they've won their games. It's not like they've struggled at all. Like I said, Cincinnati's won every game by 20 or more, other than UCF, which is always a good team who recruits well. Um, I don't know. I find it really interesting to see just where they decided to put teams. And I don't think I realistically Cincinnati doesn't have a chance to make the college football playoff. Probably they would need a lot of chaos to happen. It's just I just don't say I don't see it. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, and to your point on that, especially in a year like this, I mean, BYU was supposed to play a ton of Pac-12 teams. They always schedule so many of them, but then the Pac-12 started late and is not playing in the non-conference. So a team like BYU, they just got to on the fly reschedule all these teams, and they've beaten them, but a lot of those teams are not very good because they had to just kind of makeshift their schedule. But they're sitting at 9-0. They've pretty much destroyed everybody that they have had to play so far. So I feel like a team like BYU is really kind of hurt just by the year that we've seen so far.
Oh yeah, of course. And they were saying last night, who was it? One of the college football analysts on ESPN was saying these teams are gonna have to schedule games on the fly for like 3 weeks from now. They're gonna have to put more games so they can have a better case. And it's like, why should a team like BYU, who is going to win 10 games, have to schedule 2 or 3, potentially 3 more games against pack opponents, whoever wants to play, just so they have a chance to make the college football playoff? It's like if you have to win 13 games, and even that, I don't think that they would be guaranteed to make it, even if they did schedule a game against an Oregon and beat Oregon. Would that guarantee them a spot in? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
It's crazy to think about how. I mean, the 4 team thing has always been an issue with me. I think they should have another round. It would just make things more fair, especially because we've seen fives in the past that are still very, very good contender worthy teams.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think my idea on that, I would like to see a 16 playoff, just kind of play it how the NFL had done it before. Now, obviously, they add an extra wild card team. The NFL does this year, but the fact that your top two seeds they'll get a bye, then you play 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. So, and then you reseed after that first round. That's kind of what I would like to see. I think some other teams would like to see a chance, like a team like Cincinnati. If we're talking 6 teams get in, I think they would definitely have a better case. But that's kind of the situation we got. Obviously, usually the weekend after Thanksgiving is the last week of the regular season in college football. Not the case this year. We've got a few extra games tacked on after that. But so we don't get Ohio State, Michigan this week, but we are getting the Iron Bowl this weekend. I'm excited for that. Alabama and Auburn. I don't think it'll. I mean, Alabama was definitely going to be favored by a lot, but that's always a fun game to watch. So looking forward to that one this weekend.
Yeah, Alabama's favored by 25. I saw that earlier. That is just disgusting. Um, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that Alabama's going to beat Auburn by 25. Um, but as we've seen in the past, Alabama is a different beast. They're a different animal. So really, what do I know? But I don't know. When you look at college football, lines are always so funny to me. It's like every game is 2 or 3 touchdowns. When you have one of the high end teams there, it's like these teams struggle too. They do have their issues every once in a while.
Yeah, no question. So that's definitely the highlight game for me this weekend in college football. Now we can look over some of the NFL games we're getting this weekend. So we talked a little bit earlier about Steelers Ravens. Obviously, that being pushed back to Sunday. Looking forward to that. Titans Colts. We're also getting that. That was a Thursday night game from a few weeks ago. Saw Indianapolis win that. That game may have a big say in who ends up winning the AFC South. Then we also have Chiefs Bucks. Should be a good game. Mahomes versus Brady in that one. So those are probably the two games that I'm most looking forward to in the NFL this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're excited to watch your Eagles go up against the wonderful Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean that's Monday Night Football. That could be a massacre. Eagles are not playing well. They had another tough game against the Browns on last Sunday, so we'll see. I want to see more Jalen Hurts. I know I talked about this last podcast, but that's kind of my thoughts on that. I
We
want to see more
know.
Jalen Hurts on
Oh,
Monday.
we know.
Yeah.
Trust me, we know. We've been knew that you want to see more Jalen Hurts, and that's fine. Is it gonna happen? Probably not. Let's be real here.
Yeah, Doug Peterson already said he's like Wentz is still the starter, and I'm okay with that. I would start Carson Wentz still too, but I just want to see more snaps with Jalen Hurts. I want to see him throw the ball a little bit. So that's really all I'm looking for. But yeah, it should be another good weekend in the NFL. Obviously, we'll break all of the action down next week in our podcast after it concludes. But yeah, I think we can move on now. I just have some NBA draft thoughts. I know the last podcast we recorded was on the morning before the NBA draft. So now we obviously know what happened. Anthony Edwards goes first overall to the Timberwolves. James Wiseman to the Warriors. LaMelo Ball to the Hornets. So not a huge surprise in the top three. I think that's how a lot of people saw it play out, and it did go that way. I know I talked about as well who I thought the Chicago Bulls should go with. I wanted Obi Toppin, who ends up going 8th to the Knicks, so I thought that was a good value pick for them. But the Bulls end up going with Patrick Williams from Florida State. Wasn't crazy about the pick. I don't know a ton about Patrick Williams, even still, really, but it didn't seem like everybody was too thrilled about that. But we'll see. New management for the Bulls, so hopefully that pick pans out for him. Then last pick I just wanted to highlight in the NBA draft that stood out to me was Denver Nuggets at pick 24. They landed R.J. Hampton. Thought that was a pretty good pick. Seems like the Nuggets always kind of take guys that fell a little bit more than they thought. I think Michael Porter is another recent example of that. So I like that pick for Denver to get R.J. Hampton in the mid rounds. But yeah, any takeaways for you, Donnie, watching the NBA draft last week?
I don't know. The whole virtual draft thing is still very strange to me. I can't get with it. It's like you'd like to see players be able to walk up and take their picture because I feel like that's the real culmination of everything they've done to get to where they are. So having a guy like let's say Anthony Edwards at number one, having him walk up, it would be. It would be emotional for him, especially because he told this story on TV. Being able to walk up and take the picture and be emotional about that in person is just so much. It's so different. It hits different. Um, I don't know the whole virtual draft thing. As I said, I think it's still very strange to me, and obviously they're doing a good job with what they're capable of, and I feel like it's very necessary to have the virtual draft. But I think I feel bad for these players who cannot necessarily just experience that moment, getting your name called in person, walking up in person, being able to take a picture with the commissioner, and get your interview in person by ESPN and whoever else. It's just that's got to be a life changing moment, life changing event to really. It's validation for everything your grind, for your commitment to the sport, and I feel bad for these players not able to have that validation.
Yeah, even some of the videos that they're recording in people's houses, like it was almost awkward because it's either like them and just like a small group of people. Like it's definitely tough to see. Obviously, these players they should be celebrated. Like you wish you could celebrate with everybody be at the draft, but Not unfortunately the case. So yeah, we've now seen a few drafts kind of go that way. So it's kind of tough how it goes, but that's the way it plays out this year, I guess.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to mention. I just think it's really funny that LaMelo Ball ended up on the Hornets. I don't know. It just might be my thought process, but I just think it's so funny to see just how things are gonna end up. Especially because if I'm Michael Jordan, there is no way I want to deal with LeVar Ball ever again. Like period. He's just such a stooge. But I found it really funny when they picked him, and then all the memes started popping up saying, "Oh, you want that 1v1 game?" From a couple years ago. I think it's just everything is such a mess, and it makes the NBA great. I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to see that LeVar Ball Michael Jordan game. I want to see that end up happening. So
They should do it for
hopefully we get
charity.
that.
I'm telling you, they would raise money. They would raise bands for that, bro. They would raise bands.
Yeah, we got to make that happen. So yeah, good stuff there relating to the NBA. So definitely just
Oh,
wanted to
oh,
touch on that.
one more thing,
Yeah, go ahead.
everybody. Shouts to Sheck West for signing in the French second league. He signed with the Paris's basketball team in the second league in France after going undrafted in the NBA draft. You really have to give him credit. He's following his dream. I respect it.
Yeah, we really do. Even though we tried to draft Check West on Roadie on the Horn podcast, we attempted to. So maybe I don't know. Maybe we got to trade for him now. What
Yeah,
do you
we got
think?
a call saying that somebody else signed him before we did. We could draft him, which is unfortunate. Yeah, obviously, I would have liked to have him on our team, but we can make a move. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we got to get Check West on. Obviously, you guys knew that. All right, bunch of questions this week, as we always do on our podcast. We get questions from our listeners. It's awesome. We get to talk about what you guys want to talk about, so it's good stuff. We'll get into that right now. Start with my friend Trey, and he says, "Do you think it's too late for an NFL team to hire a defensive coordinator? In specific, the Tennessee Titans." So this is actually a very interesting situation. I don't even know how like public knowledge this is, but the Tennessee Titans, they had a defensive coordinator last year, Dean Pease, and he decided to retire. So Mike Vrabel said, "You know what? I'm not hiring a defensive coordinator. I'm calling all the plays, and I'll just work with our outside linebacker coach, Shane Bowen." And so far this year, the Tennessee Titans' third down defense is the worst in the NFL. They are allowing opponents to convert third downs at almost 54%. So almost over half the time opponents are completing third downs against the Titans. It's like historically bad, their third down defense. And I was doing more into this. I was like, okay, so the Titans, they don't have a defensive coordinator. Like, has Mike Vrabel been asked about this? And a few weeks ago, after the Titans lost to the Cincinnati Bengals, Mike Vrabel said, "I'm certain that that's not what's leading to us giving up points and not getting us off the field on third down, because I'm sitting there and I watch everything that we do." So kind of a classic example of a head coach thinking that he's smarter than everybody else and not wanting to accept help. So yeah, kind of an interesting situation. I think the Titans definitely could go the route if they want to get a defensive coordinator. I think it would probably be smart midseason, like Trey's asking here. How about Dan Quinn? He just got fired midseason by the Falcons. You can just bring him on board for the rest of the year, but it doesn't sound like Mike Vrabel's going that direction. And the Titans, yeah, their third down defense historically bad, so it's not going great so far for them there.
Yeah, they're also averaging like almost a touchdown more allowed per game this year than last year, which is interesting. Obviously, there's some personnel change there. But you're giving up 26 points a game. Not necessarily ideal, especially when you are a. I'd say the Titans are one of the more slow offenses in the league in terms of how much they run the ball a lot. Obviously, a lot of clock comes off. So their defense is really giving up a lot of points in less time than you would expect that they would be able to. Um, I don't know. I would definitely make a move. Again, we see this a lot. Egos in the NFL are king. Egos are number one. You never get past somebody that doesn't have an ego in the NFL, especially with a coach. And you see a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting. I think I don't know. It might be too late, honestly, because you'd have to buy somebody. You have to get somebody that buys into the system, almost 100%. Like somebody who is willing to run with whatever you've got going, because you can't really change things at this point. There's just a lot of moving parts, and with COVID, people are going to miss practice. There's a lot of question marks there. I would definitely say the Titans need a defensive coordinator. They need some help. They need something. But I think going into Week 11, there's only 7 weeks left in the season. You got to think probably a little bit too late, which is unfortunate for them considering I think the Titans were one of our teams that could have definitely made noise this year and maybe gone in the AFC or shocked some people.
Yeah, in agreement with you on that. I don't think it will happen, but I still think some benefit. Like I said, I think Dan Quinn, even if you brought Dan Quinn in, just like get some more advice. Like, what do you think we could do? If Mike Vrabel still wants to call the plays defensively, that's okay with me. But I think bringing in an outside person like Dan Quinn, who, like I'm saying, like he just got fired this year, he's just hanging out right
So
now. I think if you just brought him in and say, hey, we'll take your feedback, I would be on board with
So
that.
on like a consultant basis, you'd get somebody that would basically be you'd have an assistant basically. You wouldn't necessarily have a new coordinator. That makes sense. I'm fine with I'd be fine with that because I don't know. I've always thought that having the more talented brains in the room in general would help any team at that. I mean, it's not like Dan Quinn is a loser. Nobody can't help anybody. It's like Dan Quinn's been around for a while. He knows what's going on. I don't know. I think it's such a weird situation. I didn't personally know that they didn't have a defensive coordinator until this question was asked. So it's news to me. But I mean, you can definitely tell their defense is going to be considerably worse than they were last year. They're already on pace to give up like 80 or 90 more points than they did last year, and their defense was incredible. Their defense was very very good last year when it needed to be. So you would think that there may be maybe some changes necessary or at least some help brought in.
Yeah, it's been a big drop off from last year. Yeah, as you said, Dan Quinn, he was the Seahawks defensive coordinator the year they were winning the Super Bowl, and that's when he got that head coaching job with the Falcons. So yeah, even if you just brought him in and say, hey, listen, our third down defense is like the worst in the history of the NFL. Can you just help us like get that a little bit better? I think Dan Quinn could give you some good ideas on that. So that's my thought process there. But yeah, I don't anticipate it happening, especially after I read that quote about Vrabel saying that I watch everything that we do, so I'm gonna make the decisions. Which I mean, hey, if you make it to be a head coach in the NFL, I guess you're entitled to say that, but I think accepting outside help would probably be the right way, especially given the fact that they've struggled so much in certain situations. So good thought there from Trey. As you said, Donnie wasn't aware of the defensive coordinator lapse in Tennessee, so good question there. Trey's got one more question for us. He says, why do the Washington football team use J.D. McKissick as their receiving back when Antonio Gibson literally played wide receiver in college at Memphis? And this is true. I went in PFF and I was like, let me pull up the stats on this. So J.D. McKissick has played more snaps than Antonio Gibson this year by about 80, and he's played more receiving snaps than Gibson by 130. So it's very strange. I don't know. J.D. McKissick is okay, I guess, but yeah, I mean, I think Antonio Gibson has shown a lot of promise so far in his rookie year with Washington. I would definitely think they should be using him more. And as Trey said, yeah, he literally played wide receiver at Memphis. Like, they were using him in the slot and running routes down the field. I think they could definitely be better utilizing Antonio Gibson in that role. So Peyton Barber is the only other running back who's gotten snaps this year for Washington, 100 snaps and like 30 receiving snaps. So not huge, but yeah, it is kind of interesting that they're using McKissick so much more than Gibson in the passing game.
It's Washington. What do you expect at this point? Like, I think if there's any team that probably has some personnel issues or just doesn't make the right decisions, Washington would be one of the few on the top of the list there. Obviously, they're close in the division because the division's bad, but it's not like they're doing anything to help themselves personally. Uh, yeah, nothing makes sense, really. I looked at the same thing. It's like Gibson had like 800 yards receiving and in his last year in college. You'd think that you would like to have somebody that has because you can almost guarantee that he's a better route runner. He's probably a little bit more flashy side to side. Probably could do more against linebackers, especially if you're a slot receiver out of the backfield. You probably do a lot, but it's like you just have to you have to question a lot of things that Washington does and a lot of the other bad football teams do in the league. So things like this don't surprise me.
Yeah, no question. Especially now you got Alex Smith. He's throwing to running backs a lot. So I think you should be using Gibson in that role. Younger player as well. Obviously, he's just a rookie. So I'm in agreement with you on that, Trey. I want to see more Antonio Gibson in that offense as well. So good thoughts there from Trey about some NFL teams making odd decisions. So we love it. Appreciate that. Those thoughts there. All right, we'll move on here. Next question asker comes from our friend Gens at Gensel on Twitter. He says, huge Bears fan here. Just wondering, WTF are we going to do at quarterback since both of our quarterbacks are cross-eyed and Nick Foles has the mobility of BK after 9 rips? So absolutely hilarious question from Gens here. I mean, yeah, Nick Foles, his mobility, it's very limited. He just had a hip injury. He got carted off. Sounds like it's not as serious as we initially thought, but he's not going on injured reserve. But don't anticipate him playing this weekend against the Packers. So that's probably going to go back to Mitch Trubisky, who had been out the last 2 games after a right shoulder injury. He suffered in that game against the Saints. He was present in practice this week, so probably going to be Trubisky in this game. But yeah, I mean, it has not been good for the quarterback production for the Bears this year. I'm also going to say their offensive line is also not getting it done either. They're not really doing them any favors. Either quarterback, whoever's out there, clearly they're both injured, so they're not doing a good enough job at that. But yeah, funny thought from Gens. But yeah, Donnie, any thoughts for you on what we can say to Bears fans in a situation like this?
Yeah, funny enough, Gantz is not a Bears fan. Gantz is actually a Lions fan. He's just trolling, which I really appreciate because, the Bears fans, I heard so much out of BK saying, oh, that they won most of their games at the beginning of the year. They were fired up, they were ready to go, and then, you look at them now, they are probably not a favorite, not a team I would pick to be making the playoffs right now. So, you have to think I don't know if it's necessarily Nick Foles' fault, but I don't think he's very good. No offense to you, obviously. I know he's folklore for you. He's one of your legends that you've seen win your team a championship. But I don't think it necessarily matters. I think at this point, if you're playing Nick Foles over Trubisky, you're kind of establishing that Trubisky does not have the ceiling to be able to really, be that guy. I would assume the Bears will be picking a quarterback in this upcoming draft. I think it's probably a fair assessment. I would say if there's a team that's going to trade up to pick a quarterback, it would be the Bears. Uh, I don't know necessarily what they're going to do this year. I think this year's probably a lost year at this point. You just have to establish that they're playing the Packers this week. I don't think the Bears beat the Packers. You could throw any quarterback in there. I don't think the Bears beat the Packers. So it comes to the point where they're gonna have to play their division more. They've only got 2 division games so far, and it's not like there's no gimme games in the NFC North. It's like the Vikings are good, the Lions are okay. You can always lose those games. It's like the Bears have lost 4 straight. They're really, I don't know. You have to feel for them, but I just don't think that they have a chance regardless of a quarterback. I would assume that they will be high on drafting a quarterback in this upcoming draft.
Yeah, I think that they should definitely be going that direction. I even thought that should be something that they considered last year, and then they went out and traded for Nick Foles. So that has not worked out. But yeah, funny thought from Gentz, obviously, saying that Nick Foles has the mobility of BK after 9 rips. Do you have any comments on that part of it, Donnie?
Yeah, we've seen BK try to play COD after 9 rips. It doesn't go well, so I definitely wouldn't try to. I wouldn't want anybody at quarterback that was doing that. He'd be falling over himself. He'd be throwing picks, fumbling the ball around. You just don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with agreement on that. So appreciate that thought from Gens. Very funny thought. We'll look forward to hearing your thoughts on that when we put this out. So appreciate it. All right, we'll keep going here. Next question asker, our friend Dan at @dmoff_. He says Chelsea is winning the league. Let me on the podcast, cowards. So I mean, a couple thoughts there, but yeah, Donnie, what do you want to say to Dan here?
Well, Dan has been invited to the podcast multiple times. He has been offered a spot on the podcast. So let's leave it at that. First off, second off, I do not think Chelsea wins the league. They're currently third. I think they're a couple points behind Tottenham and Liverpool, who are better teams. Um, Chelsea winning the league would be devastating because I would never hear the end of it by Dan. I just don't want to deal with it. So I have actively chosen to root against Chelsea in their chances to win in the Premier League. I have been very, very anti-Chelsea this year, and I'm going to continue to be anti-Chelsea this year because I don't want to hear Dan spew about it because that's all he talks about. Yeah, Dan, you've been invited. You've been offered. Like Steve came on before you did. How did that happen? How did we manage that?
Dan's out of excuses for reasons he hasn't come
Oh,
on the podcast.
he's
At this
so out
point,
of
he's got it
excuses.
set up now. It's really just shocking why Dan hasn't been on our podcast yet, but it'll happen soon. So, yeah, we look forward to that. Chelsea winning the league. I'm gonna go with Donnie's analysis on that. That's not happening because that's my soccer analysis. So there you go.
Yeah,
Appreciate
we're,
that
we're
thought,
taking
Dan.
Liverpool.
Yeah, okay, Liverpool. But there's a good thought. But okay, well, I guess we can keep on that theme though. Our next question asker is our friend Steve at Anders IEE, and he's a Manchester United fan, and he says, "Who's the best player in the world, and why is it Bruno Fernandes?" So Donnie, what do you thought? More soccer talk.
It's I saw that it is not Bruno Fernandez. He is a penalty merchant. I don't appreciate it. You can go with somebody that RK likes in Neymar. Neymar is
Let's go.
one of his guys. You can go with obviously RK knows who Kylian Mbappe is. He's heard us talk
Oh
about him
yeah.
before. Guys like that. Bruno, great man. He's really doing a lot for your team. That's currently 10th on the table, which is not really exciting. But definitely not the best player in the world. He's very talented, but he's a penalty merchant. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, there you go. I agree with that. Neymar's my guy in soccer, so I'm gonna go with Neymar, the best player in the world. So yeah, there we go. That's our soccer thoughts. So back-to-back soccer thoughts on that. But we'll get back into some other thoughts. Steve's got a few more questions. This next one, he says, Johnny Boychuk is a good man. I agree. Unfortunate news today coming out about Johnny Boychuk. The Islanders tweeted out today that Johnny Boychuk's career has unfortunately come to an end due to an eye injury he suffered in the regular season. So, yeah, that's too bad. Johnny Boychuk's been around the league a while, obviously. Played a lot of games for the Bruins and the Islanders. So, unfortunate there. But, yeah, definitely agree. Johnny Boychuk, definitely a good man and a player that will unfortunately have to end his career here.
Yeah. Whenever things like this happen, no matter what team it is, no matter who it is, you kind of have to feel bad about it because Johnny Boychuk is still playing. Johnny Boychuk is still a good player. We've seen a lot of careers be derailed by injury. It's like even a guy like Mark Stahl who had an upper body injury that ended up basically derailing his career and taking him from an elite or an all-star to AHL level talent. It hurts to see, but yeah, obviously we wish Johnny Boychuk the best, and he's I'm sure he's doing fine. He is at the end of his career anyway, so maybe not the worst for him. Obviously, he doesn't have to play in a COVID season, can stay at home with his family. Hopefully, he can recover fully and all that. But it might not be the worst time for Johnny Boychuk to say goodbye. Obviously, a little bit young, but there are some negatives with the NHL associated with COVID and everything right now. So it may be the best to not be playing at this point.
Yeah, well said there. Johnny Boychuk, he gets to end his career going to the Eastern Conference Final with the Islanders. That was a pretty decent season that they just finished up. So best of luck to Boychuk going forward. Hopefully he gets the eye figured out and can still figure out, salvage that situation. But yeah, unfortunate news there. One more thought from Steve on hockey, and he says, guess we won't have an NHL season, I notice. So, yeah, I mean, the NHL, they've been very, very quiet on any sort of news about when we could get hockey back. Obviously, they have no idea either. All we really know is that we're not having stuff in January like the All-Star Game or the Winter Classic. So, I mean, it's very much up in the air when we're going to see NHL hockey back. So, NHL has been pretty quiet on that front.
Yeah, they've been trying to draft up COVID protocols and everything they have to do this year, the last couple of weeks. And apparently they have made negative progress. They've gone backwards, which is really not what we're looking for. The January 1st puck drop was always a pipe dream, it felt like for us anyway. And now, think about it. We are almost in December, and we have literally no news. Whereas the NBA is like, yeah, we just did our draft. Our season's going to start in a couple weeks. We're fine. Schedule's out. We'll be okay. Um, and it goes to show, I'm thinking it'll probably end up being like, it was rumored a 48 game season beginning the last week of January, the third week of January would make more sense. Because considering prior lockout years both started January 19th, I believe, or January 20th, somewhere around there. You have to think the NHL has dropped the ball a little bit. They're behind. I don't know what took them so long to start drafting ideas and everything. It's like the season's been over for a while. But it doesn't shock me that the NHL can't get their shit together because it's we've seen it in the past. They can't get their shit together previously.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on there when it comes to January 1st just kind of being like an aesthetically pleasing day. Like, oh, it's a new year? Yeah, we'll start the season then. But really, when you kind of look at the situation going on, it's like, I mean, the health experts, they're not saying that things are really getting better right now. So, yeah, that's probably why the NHL has been a little quiet. I think we're getting a season, like Donnie said. I think we're probably looking at between like a 48 and 60 game season or something like that. Probably go into the summer a little bit more. But yeah, I think we're getting a season. But yeah, definitely a good point that news on the NHL front has been quiet lately. So, good thought there from Steve. Steve's got one more thought. He says, no Thanksgiving primetime game should be a criminal war crime. So yeah, we talked about this at the top of the podcast. Obviously, Steelers Ravens moving to Sunday, so we're only getting 2 football games. Kind of like a throwback Thanksgiving, I guess. Only Lions and Cowboys is the only football we're getting on Thanksgiving, Donnie.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else is on Thanksgiving. I'm sure there might be some college basketball or something because obviously the college basketball season has started.
Yeah, true. Iowa play today.
Yeah, I did see that earlier. They played like North Carolina Eastern or North Carolina Central, something like that, which is
big rivalry.
Yeah, huge, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what's on tomorrow night. There may be college basketball and there may be something on. But yeah, it is weird. I always remembered we would eat right before the football game would start, and then you'd lumber into the living room and just you'd hang out. Maybe by the end of the game, you're having some dessert or something. You have pumpkin pie, something along those lines. But it's very strange, but it's what you expect out of this year. This year has just been so weird that them canceling a football game or postponing a football game is like the least surprising thing. The one thing I would have said is they should have just moved the time slots back a little bit. I don't think anybody would have been mad about games starting at 1 o'clock and then having a game start at like 1:30 p.m. Eastern start and then like a 5 p.m. Eastern start with 2 games. I don't think anybody would have really cared. And obviously, it would have fit the time zone a little bit better, fit the timeline. But I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't know. I think it's weird, but this whole year has been weird. So like, what else is there? What else are you gonna throw at us?
Yeah, I like that thought actually, Donnie. I think you gotta get in touch with Roger Goodell, telling him to push back the Dallas start time. I like that idea a lot.
It makes too much sense. If you want viewership, if you want to make money, you want time slots. Starting your games at 12:30 and 4:30, probably not the move. You want to capitalize on nighttime. I always think of the NFL as, the primetime NFL game on Thanksgiving probably does better viewer wise than I'd say like almost all of their other primetime games, because everybody's at home, everybody's hanging out together, everybody's watching the game. Um, but yeah, I couldn't tell you necessarily what their plans are, and I don't think starting a game at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time is really the best idea for them to capitalize on viewership and all that. But again, what do I know? I'm sure there's statistics out there that tell me I'm stupid, so we'll go with it.
Yeah, hey, I like that thought though. So a lot of good thoughts from Steve there. Late question asker. Mid podcast we started recording, Steve asked his question, so I got it in. So shout out to Steve for good timing on that. So appreciate all those thoughts. All right, we'll move on. Next question asker, our friend Scott, Scotty G at Sports with Scott on Twitter. Back with more questions as always. And the first one he has here, he wants to hear Donnie's thoughts on Oklahoma Sooners legend Sterling Shepard.
Good man. I wish he stayed healthy. It would be really great if he could have a full season where he didn't have to deal with some sort of injuries, because um, he's one of those players. Him, Evan Engram, all the rest. They're one of those players that's like, if he's healthy, if he plays all 16 games, he could be really good. But is he ever going to play 16 games? I just don't think so at this point.
Yeah, I like Sterling Shepard too. I saw Sterling Shepard play once in college. My dad and I went to a Clemson, Oklahoma Orange Bowl that Sterling Shepard played. So I've seen Sterling Shepard play, but yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Sterling Shepard's still a pretty good player. But yeah, I mean, health is kind of always an issue with him. But I feel like he's kind of one of those players that it's like he's really going to take off once he goes to his second team. I feel like it's just kind of like there's always just kind of like issues that he faces when he goes with the Giants, whether it's bad quarterback play or injuries, like you're saying. So yeah, if Sterling Shepard ever hits the free agent market, I think somebody's gonna end up with a pretty good receiver there.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that they'd let him go, considering their receiver depth is just so piss poor right now. And I think the OBJ trade was made thinking, oh, Sterling Shepard could step in and take this role, or at least put up better numbers. And obviously we haven't seen that yet. And then they signed Golden Tate, and Golden Tate useless. But I don't know. I'd like to say Sterling Shepard could be an elite receiver in the league, but he can't stay healthy, and that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, I think Darius Slayton's probably your wide receiver one, but yeah, I think Shepard's a pretty good player. He's had some good games against the Eagles in the past too. So
yeah, that definitely wasn't the
expectation
though. That Slayton was not expected to step in and be as good as he has been. Although down year, I don't think anybody expected that. He would be better than Shepard, but again, he took advantage of the fact that Shepard can't play the game, so that's great.
All right, Scotty G, a few other thoughts for us. He wouldn't be a podcast without Scotty G asking about his Oklahoma Sooners. So he says, what do you think about Oklahoma's 90th win against Oklahoma State? Fun fact, since the start of Bedlam in 1904, there have been more MLB perfect games than there have been times when Oklahoma State has won Bedlam. So, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma, they absolutely dominate Oklahoma State. We previewed that last weekend. Oklahoma won 41-13 over their rival in Norman this past weekend. Spencer Rattler, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. So, good game for him. Sooners kind of, creeping. They've kind of developed over the course of this year. They started off kind of slow, but they've definitely been playing better football lately. So, pretty resounding, dominant win over Oklahoma State this past weekend.
Props to them. They still don't have a chance to make the playoff. Unfortunate. But props to them for winning their games. They probably don't even win the Big 12 this year, but that's fine. At this point, I guess I'll give Oklahoma some credit, or at least I'll make Scotty happy by saying, hey, they're playing fine. Like they're doing their job now. They weren't doing their job earlier in the year, but now they are.
Yeah, fair enough. Interesting fact that's got included there. There have been more perfect games in the MLB since 1904 than there have been times when Oklahoma State has beaten their rival Oklahoma.
That's like you with the Eagles-Giants record. It's like that's something that you've always got in the back of your head. You're just waiting to bring it up whenever you can.
Yep. Every year when Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State, Scotty G's got that stat ready, I bet.
Yeah, it's a real whatever for me. But, if he's happy about beating a mediocre football team, so be it. I can't be mad.
Yeah, we'll take it. Good thoughts there. Scott, a few other thoughts he's got. Next one. Iowa didn't have the hospital kids at the game, but still managed to beat Penn State. What does this mean? So yeah, interesting thought. Obviously, yeah, Iowa, obviously after the end of the first quarter, they waved to the Children's Hospital for their games. Haven't been able to happen this year because they can't get all the kids up to the top floor because of COVID reasons. So yeah, kind of sad that that doesn't end up happening. But I think we're actually going to get a little bit of that this week, actually. They play Nebraska at Kinnick the day after Thanksgiving. So hopefully we get a little bit more sentiment and respect to the kids up in the Children's Hospital. But yeah, it was a nice win for Iowa over Penn State over the weekend. Penn State had beat Iowa 6 times in a row, so nice win for Iowa up in Happy Valley. So yeah, there you go. There's some love for the kids in the Stead Family Children's Hospital and for the Hawkeyes there. So appreciate that thought from Scott.
Penn State stinks. That's all I got for you. Penn State just
Yeah,
really,
man.
really
Penn
bad.
State's sitting at 0-5 for the first time ever. That is crazy.
It's embarrassing. It's so embarrassing, and it's like they're gonna fire their staff probably, and it's like I don't know. It's their fault. I think it's just Penn State's just bad.
Yeah, it's not been a good year for James Franklin there. They have a new offensive coordinator. They lost a ton of talent. Like all 3 of their star running backs from last year, all left. Ricky Slade transferred, and Journey Brown had to retire for a heart-related issues. So that's too bad. They still have a lot of talent. Obviously, it's Penn State. They got a bunch of good recruits. They have a good tight end, Pat Fryermuth, but he was unable to play against Iowa in that game.
You can never rationalize Penn State being below Rutgers 5 games into the season for me. I just can't. I can't feel it. It just hurts. It feels different. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really strange to see that. So that's where things lie. It's kind of a weird year in the Big Ten. Penn State and Michigan are trash, and Northwestern is undefeated. So it's kind of wild, but that's where things sit there. Next thought from Scott, we'll keep going. He says, is the kick 6 the best play in college football history? So, I mean, there's been a lot of good plays in college football history, but yeah, I mean, the kick 6 is right up there at the top. I mean, that was a crazy game. I feel like every time I talk about this play with other people, they're always like, oh, I remember exactly where I was when I was watching this play to see Alabama go down. One actually note I'm going to add to the kick 6. So there was actually 1 second left when the kick 6 happened. So obviously it was like the longest second in college football history because like the kick takes like half a second and then that play was extended. But like the play right before the kick 6, I think it was Trent Richardson. He like went out of bounds with the second left to give them that field goal attempt. And initially they said that the game was over, and then they reviewed it and added 1 second back on the clock. So that's how that play actually kind of unfolded. So I always kind of like to bring that up when I talk about this play. But yeah, Donnie, I'll shit over to you. Do you want to talk about the kick 6 or another play in college football history?
No, I mean the kick 6, obviously a legendary play. I've seen it maybe 70 times this week. If you have SportsCenter on in the background when you're doing your things, you've heard, oh my God, Auburn's going to the football game, over and over. But you know, I'll put that up there with the Miami lateral play against Duke. Obviously, you know, it should make you emotional every time you see it because it's just so stupid that it worked. It's just really the dumbest thing. It's just like the same thing as kicking a field goal and then having it taken back for 109 yards for a touchdown to end the game is just the dumbest thing that could possibly happen. And we still see coaches try to take these field goals and get greedy, and then it happened in Clemson, Miami this year. Clemson tried to kick a long field goal at the end of the half. It got blocked, and Miami took it back for a touchdown, and they were only down like 8 or 9 or 10 at half. We still see it happen a lot, even though, you know, it's like I'm thinking that's probably not the best idea to be kicking field goals. You know, your kicker probably can't make.
Yeah, really, ever since the kick 6, I feel like I've seen more teams like send out that returner late. I can't remember which game I was watching. There was a game like 2 weeks ago or something where a team set out a returner on a long field goal attempt, and it was like the middle of the half. Like normally you do that at the end of the half because if you return it and it doesn't go as far as where the initial line of scrimmage is, you're sitting where the returner ended up going. So that's kind of like the thinking, like, oh well, if field position doesn't matter, I'll send out my returner and return it back. I saw somebody do that with like middle of the half. They're sending a guy out. It's like, man, that's a big risk. You could be losing a lot of field position on that. But yeah, kind of an interesting thought. Another play I want to bring up. College football history that Scotty brought up here. The Vince Young run in the Rose Bowl that he had against USC. He's going for the corner. He's
legendary.
Got it. That was a great play. I love that play. One of the greatest games in college football history as well. So wanted to bring that one up as well. But yeah, fun conversation there. As we said, Iron Bowl coming up this weekend. So maybe we get another Auburn miracle to knock out Bama and open up a spot for Cincinnati, Donnie. Tie it all in there.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I could see it. I'm definitely not. I'm not counting it out. I don't know. We need to see something happen. College football's got to be the end of the season here. It's going to be such a shit show that we're going to need things like that to really just wrap it all up.
Yeah, no question there. So get that there from Scott. Scott's got 2 more for us, and he says, big news coming out of the NHL. Huge contract signing by Jake DeBrusk. So funny thought. I put this out on our Raw Twitter account. But yeah, as we were saying a little bit earlier, the NHL news has been very slow the last couple of weeks. But Jake DeBrusk, he signed a new contract with the Boston Bruins. 2 years, $3.675 million. So that's a bridge deal, as we're kind of expecting with a lot of these RFAs. Jake DeBrusk still just 24 years old, so he's still going to be a restricted free agent at the end of that 2-year bridge deal. So yeah, a little bit of NHL news there.
Yeah, it's fine. It's the NHL has been ridiculously slow, and it's to be expected, especially because we don't know when the season is. We don't hear anything about anything, but obviously it's a good signing. The Bruins will be a contender again next year, no matter who they play, no matter what the conferences are. So adding on guys like that, keeping guys like that on cheap deals, it makes sense.
Yeah, Bruins are another team that I kind of previewed before the offseason that I thought they were going to make a little bit more splashes in terms of free agents, but actually a pretty manageable deal there for DeBrusk at just $3.5 million. So I like that deal for Boston there. So good thought. Last thought from Scott. He's got for us. He says, what are the top tier Thanksgiving foods? So first off, shout out to Scott for saying top tier, because obviously Roth Podcast, we're a tier podcast. That's a known fact. Shout out to Scott for acknowledging that. But okay, here we go. My top tier of Thanksgiving foods. It's turkey and gravy. That's just like a classic. Like, when it's Thanksgiving, you're getting turkey and gravy. My other two foods I'm including there is stuffing and mashed potatoes. I think I associate those two foods definitely with Thanksgiving. So for that reason, I'm putting them in my top tier Thanksgiving food. Honorable mention, I will say mac and cheese. Obviously a great side. It would be in the top tier, but I think I have mac and cheese like all the time anyway, so it's not like specifically a Thanksgiving food. So there you go. There's my top tier Thanksgiving foods there. Donnie, let's hear
I'm going to go with mashed potatoes and obviously stuffing legendary. I'm going to go with just the gravy. I don't think the turkey is that good on its own. I think the turkey is it's more of a it's a vehicle for the gravy. I think the gravy is what the show is all about, I think. Turkey obviously good, but the gravy is what makes it great. So
I like that analysis right there, and I'm in agreement. Honestly, I'm not like a huge turkey fan, but it's like if it's Thanksgiving, it's like sure, give me the turkey. But I like that analysis actually. The gravy is actually kind of an underrated part. I like that you give them spotlight there.
Yeah, I mean you gotta respect it, obviously. And let's just take this time out to wish a happy Thanksgiving to everybody that is still listening. If you're not listening at this point, you're not a real fan of the podcast. No, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. We appreciate you sticking around with us. We're 40 some episodes in. Can't complain.
Yeah, love it. Obviously, we have some strictly end of the podcast folks. So now the real listeners, the middle of the podcast folks. We give the happy Thanksgiving shout out. I like that, Don.
Got to be done. We'll probably say it again at the end, but for now, those that are listening to this question answered right now, you deserve this.
Yep. Shout out to you, listener. All right, we'll keep rolling. Good shout outs for Donnie there. Next thought, question asker, our friend Josh at I Hate Lettuce Too. He says, thoughts on the Ohio State, Illinois State national title preview. So funny thought, first game of the year, college basketball, as we were just talking about a little bit ago. Ohio State, Illinois State. Josh, as we've mentioned before, he goes to Illinois State, but he's a big Ohio State Buckeyes fan. So funny tie-in for Josh. I know everybody was so tuned in to the Ohio State, Illinois State first college basketball game. So obviously Josh gets the big shout out.
Yeah, I'm sure he had a good time watching Ohio State beat Illinois State by 27. I'm sure he really sat there and I don't think it was that ideal for him, but I'm sure he had a good time finally getting to root on one of his teams. So, hey, I'll give you claps. You're coming up with something. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good stuff. Shout out to Josh there. Next thought he's got. Thoughts on all the coincidences between Lee Harvey Oswald and John Wilkes Booth. So I was like, all right, this is an interesting thought. It's Josh, not a surprise. I asked him for more information. He sent me an article with like all the similarities. So I picked out a few that I thought were interesting. Both are obviously Lee Harvey Oswald and John Wilkes Booth. I'll just say that again. So both are known by 3 names, which is comprised of 15 letters. Okay, interesting caveat. They were both were killed before being brought to trial. So neither of them had a trial, the murderers. Abe Lincoln was shot in the Ford Theater, and John F. Kennedy was shot in a Lincoln made by Ford. So an interesting note again. And they were both shot in the back of the head with the presence of their wife next to them. So kind of sad, but yeah, I mean, all the coincidences between Lee Harvey Oswald and John Wilkes Booth. Not gonna lie, I mean, I don't know. I really have no idea what to make of all this. Donnie, do you have any thoughts?
I got nothing. I don't buy into it. I mean, obviously, we discussed it's a little bit cherry picked. I understand that there are some similarities, but a lot of these things are very, very, very meaningless. It's like you could say, oh, the sky was blue, and they were both carrying out their actions. It's like great, nice to know, but it's a unique question, and I'll give you credit for that one. But I'm not super into it.
Yeah, I'm pro conspiracy theories, but I think this one needs just a little bit more mustard, more juice. I need a little bit more than some of the facts. So good thought there from Josh. Then he's got another one. He says, create a best starting five of Roth Podcast listeners. So amazing question right here. So our Roth Podcast listeners, you right now, you could be in this starting five as you listen to this podcast. But here we go. I'll give off my starting five. It starts our captain. It's Scotty G. Obviously, this isn't even like a question. Scotty G literally asks us a million questions every single podcast. Like, it's amazing. So shout out to Scotty G. Obviously, he's the captain. He's the starting five. Then the rest of it, I'll go here. Josh, I'm putting you in here. Obviously, Josh has some height. Josh is like 6'4". He loves talking about that. So that's big for a starting five. I needed to pick another tall person, so I'm going with our friend Steve. Steve, another tall person. So also been on the podcast before. Josh and Steve both been on the podcast, so shout out to them. So I got Scotty G, I got Josh and Steve for size. I got 2 more spots. I'm going with Jam. Shout out to Jam. Jam is a very consistent podcast question asker. Love hearing his Penn's thoughts. Sometimes they're interesting. Sometimes he makes fun of BK. It's good stuff. So shout out to Jam. He's getting my starting five. Last one, I'm going with our friend Vin. Vin's asked mostly just about himself, which honestly, like, that is big respect. Like, I really do respect someone who's just like, talk about me. So shout out to Vin. He's getting my last spot in my starting five. So there you go. Scotty G, Josh, Steve, Jam, and Vin. There you go. There's my starting five. Donnie, take it away.
Okay, so we will have overlap with Scotty G and Josh. Obviously, both of them have been,
2 classics. Yep.
They've been around since the start. You know, Josh has been on a couple of times. They ask questions every week. Third, I'm gonna go with your sister Kira. She really we have an end of the podcast, basically like a segment for her. So I think that's something we have to establish, that she has the last question every week, and that's how it has to be. Finally, the 2 at the end, I'm gonna have Kirk. Kirk 2000 obviously asks a lot of questions about BK. Really, just a really good time. And then finally, my good friend Neil. Neil listens quite often. He asks questions every once in a while. He gets very upset about certain sports. Big Rangers fan. You have to respect him. He is a good man, and he deserves the 5th spot in this starting 5.
I love it. That's good stuff. I feel like you know what? I picked Steve. I went for the height. Donnie went for more of the skill, like picking my sister Kira. That's a good choice right there. So good stuff.
The brains of the operation, obviously.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So really good question there from Josh. Love talking to our listeners. Obviously, that's why we do all these questions. So shout out to all you guys. We'll keep going. Josh got one more question for us. Again, funny thought, not a surprise, but he's got, if you could transport an angry grizzly bear into a historical event, what would it be? And for me, honestly, as soon as I read this question, I had my answer come to me immediately, and it's the Cal Stanford band on the field play, the last play of the game, when the one football player like smashes into the tuba player. I want a grizzly bear just like causing havoc and running around in there too. I think that would be absolutely hilarious. Plus, it's the Cal Bears, the Cal Golden Bears, so you get an angry grizzly bear in a Cal Stanford game. I just thought that was absolutely too perfect. So easy choice for me on that.
I can't believe that. That's so funny. That blew my mind a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
It's just got to happen. I need to see a grizzly bear. Like, he's at the 30. Like, what if he got the ball? What if the grizzly bear, like, took the ball from the guy and ran it back?
I had a similar thought. So what I was thinking is, Malice at the Palace. You throw an angry grizzly bear out there. With Ron Artest. Just see what happens, you know? Like, come on. Like, come on. You
want this grizzly bear on the court or in the stands?
Yeah, he's on the court. He's running down from the stands as the beer is thrown. He's pissed. He's fighting everybody. I want to see that. Just imagine. Like, you know, Ron Artest obviously was climbing over. There was also, I was just thinking a second ago, when players, you know, there was a certain Bruins player that went in the stand with an ice skate. You know, that would be an interesting aspect of things. Would he go in the stands if there was a grizzly bear instead of just a normal man?
I wouldn't run it by Mike Milbury. I think he's still going at him. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, Mike Milbury, he's a legend. So, you know, fine. Obviously, it makes a lot of mistakes, but he is a legend of the game for these moments. But yeah, I would definitely say Malice at the Palace. It would just be too much. Like, imagine, how's a grizzly bear getting indoors? First off, how's he sitting in the stands? He's like watching the game. He's got a Pistons.
Yeah. Both of our events, they're right at the end of the game. So we need this grizzly bear to like chill out for like 3 quarters, and then 4th quarter just go havoc. Just make stuff happen.
He just gets pissed. I mean, fine, great with me. I'm good with. I can't complain.
I love it. Great choice. Great question from Josh. Appreciate it. Really good questions this time from Josh. We love it. So good stuff there. All right. We just alluded to it. End of the podcast. We have a designated spot for Kira here at Kira K320. And she says, what's your favorite toy/game in the National Toy Hall of Fame? So I'll just say, little context here. My dad, for like every holiday, just loves making like these like random quizzes with like absurd questions that like, why would anybody know? And one of his favorites is like, which of these toys was inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame this weekend? So that's kind of a little bit of context for why this question was asked. But here we go. So my favorite toy, I actually made a top tier. Of course, we're a tiered podcast. So I looked it up. My favorite toys in the National Toy Hall of Fame, my top tier, here we go. Starting, of course, Monopoly. Huge Monopoly fan. Easy choice. Legos, Big Wheel, a wiffle ball, and Uno. So there you go. There's my top tier of games and toys in the National Toy Hall of Fame. So Donnie, let's shift over to you. What do you think? What are toys and games that you're a fan of?
Funny enough, I looked at the list and just ball is on there. It's just ball. You don't need anything else. Ball has to be up in the top tier. Monopoly, legendary. We've been over this multiple times. We play Monopoly now. It's just for fun, over the Xbox. That's a real classic. I'll add in one more. I think it's just really funny in general, just to look through the list and you see like pinball on there. It's like pinball. It is such a large part of my childhood. So when we would have computer classes when I was in elementary school, instead of actually doing the classes, we would just sit there and play virtual pinball. And you got to think about it like that. Like, that's something that has shaped me as a human being forever. And it's something I just can't ignore. So I'm going to go with ball, pinball, Monopoly, Claps to you. Claps to you.
Yeah, great choices. I love ball. Like, is
It's
there like a
just
specific ball that's your favorite?
No,
Just like,
no, just
like
ball.
like a dodgeball, a baseball, a golf ball.
No, just ball.
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 I want to see the picture. We got to go to the National Toy Hall of Fame and see what picture they got listed for ball there. I want to know.
It's literally just ball. It's like a round. It's a round handball. Like, great. We're really just going well here.
Good stuff. I love it. Great podcast. We just talked about sports and then our favorite listeners
and then
if
ball.
we could put a grizzly bear in an event and toys and games. So it's been a good podcast. Donnie, I'm gonna shift it over to you. You can wrap things up. We already shout out to Check West, so really you can just kind of say whatever you want.
I'll shout out
follow
one
us on
more person.
Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Let me just
Absolutely.
that out. But yeah, Donnie, go ahead now.
I'll shout out one more person. Mike Glennon. He's making his first start in the NFL in 3 years after being paid just a ridiculous amount of money to not do anything. So props to him. Mike Glennon will be starting for I think it's Jacksonville. I don't remember. I don't know where he is, but I saw Mike Glennon is starting.
Sounds right.
But thank you again, everybody that listens. Give us questions, concerns, whatever you want. We really appreciate your support. And we will be back again with another podcast next week. Happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays to everybody, and stay safe if you are traveling. If you're not traveling, thanks for using your brain. But with that, we will see you again next week. Have a great holiday.
Peace, everybody.
Yeah, the ones that hate me the most look just like me. You tell me